What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Goodol'boys YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be diagnosing what's wrong with the speedometer on the Hawk. Since we're talking about the speedometer, some of you guys may be curious as to how many miles are actually on the bike. Obviously, we've been riding this thing without the odometer working. So, with a rough guesstimate, I'm going to just tell you guys it's somewhere over 8,000 miles, even though it says 7,500. So, let me tell you how I came to this conclusion. A couple months ago, well, roughly about 7.5 months ago, I made a video. It was in December, and right around that time is kind of where the odometer quit working. So basically, we've been riding the bike for 7.5 months without the odometer working. Now, of course, along to go with that, if you look at the hours and the miles in that video, which I'll show you guys a quick clip of that. Like I said, unfortunately, our odometer is not working, so you can see the miles are exactly the same, but we can show you the hours. 261.6 hours. We had right around 261 hours, right? Now we have 277. So if you do the math, that's right around 15.5 hours of ride time without this odometer working. And just doing some rough math, and based on all the places we have gone between December and now, I've calculated roughly that we have somewhere around 8,000 miles on the bike. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what causes the odometer, speedometer to quit working. Really, there's three main components that are part of this system. You have the speedometer drive gear, you've got the cable, and you've got the actual meter itself. So those are your three main components. One of those three is going to be bad when your speedometer quits working. So the next step is going to be to troubleshoot this thing. It's actually not that bad. It's pretty simple on something like this, so we're going to get right into it. I'm going to show you guys a couple ways that you can troubleshoot your odometer and pinpoint the problem. So like I said, guys, this is pretty simple. You really only have three main components to troubleshoot. The first thing I'm going to recommend you guys check is the cable. The cable is one of the most common things that goes out pretty quickly and easily, and they either break, get in a bind from too much rust or corrosion. All kinds of things can happen to the speedometer cable, so it's the first thing that you want to check. So the first step is to go ahead and look down here by the axle, kind of on the wheel here. You're going to unscrew this. So for the cable, it's pretty simple to tell whether it's bad or not. You can literally pull this thing out, the entire thing, and just take a look at it. If it's in two pieces, if it's not one long piece like this, obviously it's broken. A lot of the times it will break down here right by the piece that goes into the axle there, just because you've got a really harsh angle when the cable is coming down there. But basically what you're looking for here is you want one solid piece from this end all the way through the cable. And it comes to this end, which you have to look very closely. The cable is mostly all the way around until the end that goes up into the speedometer itself. So what you're looking for here, which hopefully you guys can see this, is a square end. That means your whole cable is together and intact. So what this means is that the cable is in good shape and it's not the problem. Because this isn't the problem, we're going to put it right back up in here. It's pretty easy. If you guys go through this process, I highly recommend you lube the cable. Mine has actually got plenty of grease on it, so I'm going to leave it. It's as simple as just sliding it right back up in here, twist it a little bit so that it goes back up into the odometer. And when it's flush with the end of the cable again like this, the cable is all the way back up in the odometer. So the second thing we're going to troubleshoot, since the cable is good, is the speedometer itself. So now that we have this disconnected, you guys can hopefully see in here, this is perfect for a flat blade bit on a screw gun. So what we're going to do is make sure your screw gun is in reverse. You want this thing rotating counterclockwise because when the wheel is moving, that's the way that the mechanism turns the cable. All right, so you don't want to be turning this thing backwards, right? We're going to take the screw gun, you guys probably already figured this out, and stick it in here and give it some juice. So when we do this, I'm going to show you guys what the speedometer looks like. So when we do this, we're going to take our drill, connect it like I just showed you, and just pull the trigger. And you guys can see the needle is moving fine, moving smoothly, working great. So that means the speedometer is in great shape, and so is the cable. So that only leaves us with one thing that could possibly be wrong. And by process of elimination, obviously, it's this little speedometer gear. All right, guys, real quick. You guys heard me call the thing a speedometer gear. That's kind of what we're going to be calling it in this video. Let me show you guys why. So those are a couple advertisements for speedometer drive gear mechanisms. And as you can see, the names are all over the place. You could see the one advertisement said it's a speed sensor. Definitely not a sensor. It's more of a mechanism or a gear drive for the speedometer. Anyways, call it what you want, but in this video, we're going to refer to it as a speedometer drive gear or a speedometer gear. So I've gone ahead and ordered one. Unfortunately, there's no Japanese replacement part for this. I've tried, and I couldn't find anything. Now, if you guys know something that's Japanese that will fit, that works on the Hawk, let us know in the comment section below. But as of right now, you have to buy a factory Hawk speedometer mechanism. Now, like I said, the original one lasted 7,500 miles, so I'm not too concerned about buying a $30 part every 8,000 miles. It's really not that big of a deal. So anyways, we've got one here. I bought this off a guy on eBay. If you guys want to go check this out, or if you need one for your bike, I'll leave a link in the description box below to this exact part. Now, one more thing I did want to talk about here is if you guys are having a hard time and you're trying to troubleshoot your system, there is a way to troubleshoot this. All you're going to do here is spin the wheel, and you need to look in the end of this. Basically, the wheel connects to these two ears here. When that wheel is spinning forward, this is what you're looking for. You're looking in here where the threads are. This is where the cable threads in to this speedometer gear, and when the wheel turns, this should also be turning. Now, if your gears are just slightly worn, this can be still turning, but slip every once in a while. So what you want to do is put a little bit of pressure on it and turn it. And if you can feel it not turning, then obviously it's bad. So installing this new speedometer gear is pretty simple. We're going to take the nut off of the axle bolt. Before you slide the axle out, of course, make sure your speedometer cable is disconnected. Slide the axle bolt out. Roll the wheel out from under the bike. And it's as simple as that. This part just basically falls right off. Before we put the new speedometer gear on here, I wanted to do two things. First, we're going to grease up the new speedometer gear. It's going to help it last longer. It feels like it's got grease in it, but who knows what the quality is. It is a Chinese part, so we're going to grease it anyways. Second thing is, I wanted to show you guys the gears on the inside of both of these mechanisms, compare them, and show you why this is no longer working. Got a little threaded white piece. This has already been taken out, so it's easy for me to pull out on video for you guys. This is your helical style gear here. This is what drives the actual cable. Then we have a snap ring here. Take that off. You can then pull this off. And this is what our helical drive gear looks like here as well. So you can see kind of the U shape in it. You can see the teeth are kind of more round than sharp. And it's just enough clearance. You can also see on this gear, it's got a bit of a U shape in it too. It's just from wear, and there's just too much clearance. Now they don't work. So let's compare these old gears to the new gears. So same deal on this one. I'm going to keep better track of the parts. Basically, you got your snap ring, you have a washer, sure, and then your internal helical gears. So I'm pretty surprised. It looks like they have some halfway decent grease in here, but I do want to show you guys the difference here. You can see that this gear is perfectly square compared to the old gear. So we'll put those side by side for you guys. Hopefully you can see that. There's a U shape on the top of this one versus this is flat across because it's not worn. And of course, if you take a very close look at the teeth, you can hopefully see a difference there. These teeth are a lot sharper and not worn out. And of course, it's going to be the same deal with this gear. Hopefully you can see it inside there. Nice sharp teeth. It's not rounded. It's not worn out. These teeth on the old one are super worn out. Hopefully you can see that. Teeth on the new one are obviously brand new. So guys, one of the questions I always ask because I'm curious is what caused a failure like this to happen? Whenever anything breaks on the Hawk, it's always a question that I bring up. In this case, I think it's pretty simple. Obviously, we got 7,500 miles out of this, and this thing has been through a lot of water, mud, dust, dirt, you name it. So, honestly, it's kind of impressive that this thing lasted so long, but you can see all the grit stuff in there. It really sands the teeth down. And but I think this lasted a reasonable amount of time. I'm not really even upset about this at all. I think it's just a normal wear item. So of course, I highly recommend you guys add a good grease into your speedometer gear if you're replacing it, but you don't want to put too much in here. It can get to a point where you bog the gears down and it can create excess wear that you just don't want, obviously. So I'm just going to add a little bit of grease, not too much, just enough there. Also, the inside of this, it literally just rides right on the aluminum. So this is another great place that you're going to want to put some quality grease. Make sure it's greased nice and good, but of course not too much. You can see there's just a nice layer of good quality grease in there now. So now we can put this back together. So we had the main helical gear, the washer, then the snap ring, of course, just pops right on there. One other thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of grease down in here, just so that the cable doesn't get stuck, so the threads don't rust, and so it's got some kind of extra lubricant in here. So one tip for you guys is that if you're having a hard time putting the wheel on, take and lower the bike down to where the axle is at roughly the same height as where you're trying to put the wheel on. Then you can put your speedometer mechanism on. Don't forget your spacer. Make sure it has some grease on it. Put a little bit of grease on there. Make sure your rotor goes between your brake pads. And then you can slide your axle through. So one last check here. Spacer is in the correct spot. Brake pads on either side of the rotor, check. This is in the correct position. You want it so that you have this tab above this little protruding pin, and you want to basically aim this all the way up. It's going to put the least amount of stress on your cable. Now we can put the nut on. Before you tighten the axle all the way down, you want to make sure that your speedometer gear is in the correct spot, which, like I said, you always want it all the way up. It puts the least amount of stress on the cable. And then you can go ahead and do the final torque on your axle. And the last thing to do here is, of course, line the cable up with the spline and thread it into your new speedometer gear. And that's it. As you guys could see, the speedometer is working great. So is the odometer. Super nice to have this thing put back together. And now I can tell how many miles are on it. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully this video helped you out in some way or another. If it did, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out that description box below. We're going to have other videos on the Hawk 250 link down there. And we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace. Woo!
It's all about humanity.